welcome to the one and only quarterfinals of the National Science Challenge 2017. Now, this is a very crucial round for our 12 teams, as only 9 will advance, while 3 of them will be eliminated. Now, before these contenders take on greater challenges, let's have a look at what they had to do to get to this stage of the competition. This year saw 168 students representing 42 schools traveling to the Matrix at Biopolis to participate in the National Science Challenge 2017. Competition began with a qualifying round, which saw a written test whittle the field down to 22 teams. Competition became more intense than ever for these 22 teams in the demonstration round, as only 12 teams with the best scores would advance. So after a grueling day of competition, the top 12 teams moving on to the quarterfinals are: in Group 1, St. Joseph's Institution, Victoria School, School of Science and Technology, and Catholic High. In Group 2, Temasek Junior College, ACS Independent, Raffles Girls School, and Dunman High School. In Group 3, NUS High School of Math and Science, River Valley High School, Hwa Chong Institution, and Raffles Institution. And there you have it, the deserving dozen that rose above the rigors of the qualifying round and made it to the quarterfinals. Well, we decided to shake things up a bit and make these quarterfinals different. This year's focus is on science communication. Why, you ask? Well, future scientists need to be able to communicate effectively. They also need to build public support for science, to promote understanding of its wider relevance to society, and make science more inclusive. Poor scientific information spread on social media can have dire, far-reaching consequences, such as a drop-off in child immunization rates or a spread of misinformation about the causes and effects of climate change. So many now realize a successful scientist must also be an effective communicator. So for this quarterfinals, the 12 teams are divided into 3 groups and tasked to communicate scientific concepts to a panel of judges, most of whom are scientists themselves. Others, however, are impartial professionals chosen for their expertise in communication. Our judges for the quarterfinals are biology researcher Zhang Huiting, molecular biologist Xiong Qiancheng, and Dr. Matthias J. Caldes. Communication judge Siti Fadzila, scientist John Mark Hyunpong, and celebrated marine biologist Professor Leo Tan. What do our quarterfinalists have to do to impress our judges and score well? Let's take a look. The quarterfinalists will be judged on understanding of the topic, use of accessible language, and making it relevant to the audience. Unfortunately, only 9 teams can advance to the semifinals, which means that the team with the lowest score from each group in today's quarterfinals will be eliminated. Okay, let's take a look at our first challenge in this quarterfinals. Thanks. Have you ever wondered how much water you need? Well, each person needs at least 2 liters of water a day just to stay healthy. That's 14 liters of water a week. Some plants need even more than that just to stay alive. Going weeks without water seems impossible. However, some plants have adapted to do just that. For example, a cactus can survive for months without rain. Cacti thrive in many deserts around the world in hot, dry conditions. How do they do this? That's what our quarterfinalists have to communicate to our judges today. But where can we find dry desert cacti in Singapore? Well, at Gardens by the Bay, of course. Since it first opened its doors in 2012, Gardens by the Bay has become one of the most amazing and iconic attractions in Singapore. Its collection of more than 1 million flowers and plants from all over the world is awe-inspiring. The 4 teams from Group 1 traveled to the Flower Dome, which is the largest glass greenhouse in the world and replicates the cool, dry climates of Mediterranean regions. Here, they will get a brief of the day's Science Communication Challenge.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Gardens by the Bay. Congratulations on making it to the quarterfinals round of the National Science Challenge 2017.
In the Flower Dome, our teams were briefed by an A-star biologist on the day's challenge. Our teams need to communicate to the judges which cactus adaptations help them survive in the desert, and especially how photosynthesis in cacti is different than normal plants.
The key point of this challenge is not for you to be like show off your smarts or something like that. It's like we give you the materials, you digest it and turn it into something that other people can understand. Does this make sense?
After their tour of the Flower Dome, the teams head to the Sun Pavilion, which houses cacti that can survive in Singapore's humid climate. Here they will prepare their presentations. Like cacti in the desert, the teams must survive the rising temperature in the Sun Pavilion as they debate how to impress the judges with their science communication skills. All 4 teams in Group 1 are working very hard, but how will they fare in the final presentation? Stay tuned to find out. Coming up, which future scientists will impress the judges and who will wilt and fail in the heat of the moment? Stay with us and find out.
Hey, it's Joachim Gomez from 987. Now, the Big Bang Theory, not just a TV show, it is also the leading theory on how our universe came to be. Our universe started with a small singularity, bang, and it inflated over the next 13.8 billion years to become the cosmos that we know today. So, if the formation of our universe is called the Big Bang, then what do you think the scientific theory called the Big Whack describes? I'll fill you in after the break. Welcome back. So before the break, I asked you to guess what the so-called Big Whack theory describes. Well, it's the currently accepted theory on how the Earth got its moon. 3.5 billion years ago, the Earth was whacked by a large Mars-sized object scientists call Theia, gouging out a piece of the crust that eventually came together in space to form the moon and increase the size of the Earth. Far out?
Welcome back to the National Science Challenge 2017. Now, before the break, we left St. Joseph's Institution, Victoria School, School of Science and Technology, and Catholic High at the Flower Dome located at the beautiful Gardens by the Bay. Now, let's see how they do in their final presentation to the judges. To score well, our teams need to communicate how cacti can thrive in the hot and dry desert. How do the cacti do it? By working nights. Most plants take carbon dioxide into their leaves during the day via tiny pores in the plant surface. They do this in order to perform photosynthesis to change sunlight into food. But these plants lose a lot of water when they open their pores during the day. A cactus survives on less water by only opening its pores at night when it's cooler. In this way, a cactus can live for months without water. Let's see if our teams can communicate this process effectively. First up, Catholic High School uses an effective tactic to grab the judges' attention: humor.
This is so silly. Why are we walking through a desert? It's so hot and dry.
It's too dry. Not enough water. Why does that stupid cactus get to live? Life is so cruel.
Hey, I may be a cactus, but I have really special abilities that help me survive in the desert.
But they also back up the humor with science, clearly explained.
Pines are modified versions of leaves which are thin and small, which will reduce surface area to volume ratio, therefore decreasing transpiration.
Other than that, I'm also able to store water all over my body.
But I have one question. You are able to do all these abilities, but how do you make food? It's so hot out here.
It is simple. I do what all plants do. I photosynthesize.
School of Science and Technology is the only team that gets the judges involved. Clearly an effective tactic to engage their interest.
The skin of those branches are actually glossy like this. So when you shine it onto here, you observe that some of them fall to here and not onto the plant itself. So as to help reduce the damage from the thermal sun, as well as to conserve water.
Victoria School communicates accurate scientific data, but for the communication judge, it was also difficult to understand.
Photosynthesis in normal plant consists of the formation of sugar, such as glucose, using carbon dioxide and water combined together to form glucose and oxygen.
So now, I will be talking about crustacean acid metabolism, which is CAM for short. So in the night, the carbon dioxide is taken in and the energy is stored.
What they do is, this is to avoid the high temperature during the day so that there will be less water loss.
And it's converted to malic acid with the help of enzyme 1, which is PEP carboxylase.
In the daytime, when these close, there will be enough carbon dioxide for the plant to be able to carry out photosynthesis in the daytime without having to open the stomata to allow more carbon dioxide to enter and also water to escape.
I may be a cactus, but there's so much more that Singapore can learn from me. Therefore, Singapore, do not be spineless. And I appreciate that you enjoy my dry sense of humor.
Now, all 4 teams in Group 1 have given their spiel on how cacti can survive in the desert. Which team did you think outshone the rest in terms of explaining the theories clearly? Now, before we find out what the results are of the first challenge, we need to check in on Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum to see how teams in Group 2 are faring in the second challenge of the quarterfinals. The Lee Kong Chian Museum is Singapore's natural history museum. Its main gallery consists of 15 zones, tracing the history of life on Earth.
This museum has a very rich history. It was started by the British more than 160 years ago, and we sort of closed it down in the 70s. But in the intervening years, we managed to resurrect it again, and in 2015, we got this beautiful place. The strength of this museum is not in the dead specimens. Actually, it's a very living museum. The future of biodiversity, the future of human beings, depends on whether we understand how these animals lived, how they died, and whether we would go the way of the dodo and the dinosaurs or not. So it's entirely up to us. And this museum actually is a museum of the future to teach our young generations that if they want to live, they must protect the biodiversity, because without plants, without animals, we are all dead.
Aiming to be a leader in Southeast Asian biodiversity, it has over 1 million specimens from throughout the region. But the 4 teams from Group 2 are more concerned about grasping and explaining the concepts of biomagnification and the role of sharks in our oceans. Would you eat a bowl of soup knowing that it was made from minced endangered species? What about if it was also full of toxins that can cause disease? Still hungry? Well, I'm talking about shark's fin soup. Studies show that sharks have among the highest levels of mercury and also other toxins found in fish. This is because of a process called biomagnification. We dump lots of mercury into the ocean, which is eaten by small organisms such as krill. Fish eat lots of these krill and accumulate higher levels of toxins, and they in turn are eaten by bigger fish, who store even more of the toxins. Finally, apex predators such as sharks eat lots of these contaminated fish and end up with the highest levels of toxins of all. The task of our teams in the museum is to describe this process in detail and also communicate other reasons why losing our sharks is bad, not just for our oceans, but for humankind as well.
Good afternoon to all of you. My name is Matthias. I am a research fellow from the Institute of Molecular and Cell Biology from ASTAR. On behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to congratulate you for passing to this round. Today you will be faced with a new challenge. This is a very different challenge compared to the previous one. The aim of the challenge is to develop a strategy for an interactive presentation to make people from general public to understand what is the problem of biomagnification and what is the relationship with fish consumption and the reduction of the marine ecosystem. You will have to use the case of fishing sharks as an example.
Dr. Caldez tells the teams that they can take advantage of the displays in the museum and sets them on their task. The teams at the museum are realizing their shark challenge is a tough one. They are trying hard to keep their heads above water. But have they gone off the deep end? Meanwhile, let's find out which teams at Gardens by the Bay impressed the judges and made their way through to the semi-finals. Our first team going through is St. Joseph's Institution.
We were able to present scientific terms simply, and this allowed one of the judges that was a non-expert to understand us, and therefore we were able to gain more marks.
I feel it's because our teammates, we all worked hard and we worked together, thus we were able to be successful in this round.
The next team advancing to the semi-finals is Catholic High.
I believe that's because we are able to utilize the science of a cactus, science of me, onto the real-world context.
Firstly, I think it's entertaining, the fact that he's a cactus. And scientific concepts-wise, we did bring in quite a bit of concepts. We also tie in with geography about how different landscapes provide different conditions for different plants to grow.
And our last team from Group 1 to make it through to the next round is School of Science and Technology.
We gave the judges something to do. We keep stuff interesting, so yeah, we think that's pretty good. That's why we got through.
I think we had a lot of many great props, and I think we delivered a simple yet concise presentation.
All the teams in Group 2, Temasek Junior College IP, ACS Independent, Raffles Girls Secondary School and Dunman High have made a splash with their talent and passion. But will they continue to impress the judges with their presentations? Stay tuned to find out. Coming up, the teams get creative and comical to impress the judges, but do they go too far and get the signs wrong? So I've been told that you can actually use your body heat to generate power and power something up potentially. I find it hard to believe. So Kedar, please explain to me what's going on.
It's true. Let me give you a little demo, right? So all I'm going to do is take this magic device, just put your hands over, and you can see the LED light up. Look at that.
Oh, it's actually lighting up.
It is actually
I am
lighting
hot
up.
enough for the job. Okay.
So this is not really magic. The way it works is there's a semiconductor inside, which means that you have electrons or charges moving from the hot side to the cold side, and then they move through these wires and generate power.
So what can we power up?
So unfortunately today, we cannot use our body heat to charge up a cell phone, for example. That would be amazing.
That would be
is still
goals,
sci-fi,
yeah.
indeed. But what we have here is a little demo for you where we show when there's a larger temperature difference, you can actually generate power enough to charge up a cell phone. Can you help me please pass the ice?
Yes. Oh,
Sanya?
okay. So do we put the ice on top?
Just put the ice on top. The ice, as you know, is 0 degrees Celsius.
Ah,
And don't
okay.
touch the hot plate. This is about 100 degrees Celsius, as hot as boiling water.
Okay.
It can do damage. So you have the temperature difference. Same device that I showed you before between these two things. Cold, 0 degrees Celsius, hot, 100 degrees Celsius. And that temperature difference is enough to actually power up your cell phone. So I wanted to give it a shot.
Really?
Yes.
Okay. I'm gonna try that.
The drum roll.
It actually works.
It does. This is what we're
Fabulous.
working on in our lab. So what we're doing today is actually taking the same technology, developing new materials, where we can actually use your body heat to power up smaller versions of these batteries. So something like in your smartwatch, for example,
So
or sensors.
I can legit bring this around and charge my phone
That's
because
exactly
I just
right.
put in my handbag like this
That's-
entire thing.
Absolutely. I can give you one for free if you like.
Great. I'll bring it around at all times.
Perfect. So there you go. That's how we're going to power up the future. This is what NASA actually uses today to power up their spacecraft. So Mars rover that went to Mars a few years ago, it actually used a thermoelectric device, just like what I've shown you here, except where do they generate the heat from? It's not from the sun, it's from a nuclear core, something you can do in outer space that you obviously cannot do on Earth, right? But the device is exactly the same. So There you go. That's how thermal electricity works. And this is how
Fabulous.
we're going to power up the future.
Goodbye, portable chargers.
Indeed.
Did you know that every atom in your body is billions of years old? Hydrogen, one of the most common elements in the universe, was made in the Big Bang 13.7 billion years ago. Heavier atoms in our bodies, such as carbon and oxygen, were forged in stars between 7 and 12 billion years ago and blasted across space when the stars exploded. Some of these explosions were so powerful that they also produced elements heavier than iron that stars cannot construct. This means that components of our bodies are truly ancient. You and I, all of us, we're all made of stardust, so we should just chill.
Welcome back to the National Science Challenge 2017. Now, before the break, we left teams in Group 2 at the Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum to make their presentations to the judges. To get a good score, our teams will need to communicate how sharks play a vital role in the oceans. Sharks are at the top of the food chain and so keep populations of other fish healthy and in proper proportion for their ecosystem. Many are scared of sharks and don't care about their fate. However, what we should all really fear is a world without sharks. When sharks disappear, we see disastrous effects, including the collapse of fisheries and the death of coral reefs. Each year, humans kill more than 100 million sharks worldwide. That's almost 10,000 every hour. Sharks are quickly headed for extinction. Let's hear from the teams about the devastating impact this can have on our lives. Raffles Girls' School and Temasek Junior College IP put on dramatic performances which enthralled the judges and helped communicate difficult concepts.
Hello, I'm Ling Ling. And I'm Ming Ming. And we're getting married!
Oh no, the mercury levels in my fishes are increasing and I don't know why.
Oh, you know, this is probably due to biomagnification, intentionally, as well as passively, introducing artificial mercury into the oceans.
ACS Independent gave a commendable presentation that went deep into the science.
Biomagnification is the process by which toxins become more concentrated, moving up the food chain.
Dunman High School was the standout team of the day. They brought the judges to their feet with a presentation full of wit, clarity, and accurate science.
You want a hamburger? I love fast food. I eat 10 hamburgers on a daily basis. Let's say that my friend there, but maybe I shouldn't call him a friend anymore because he's become a cannibal. He decides to eat 10 of me per day. In essence, that means he's consuming 100 hamburgers per day.
And these planktons are eating these heavy metals.
But wait! What are these heavy metals?
Mercury is primarily produced as a byproduct of metal production, waste treatment, and coal burning.
These metals are being released into our ocean every day.
The purple block represents the amount of mercury in each organism, so when the shark comes, it will consume all of them.
Hey, Ming Ming, I think that at our wedding, we should order shark's fin soup. Hey, that's a great idea. Remember at our Bing's wedding, they had shark's fin soup and everybody liked it. Yeah, when we had shark's fin soup, it will be a status symbol and everyone will think that we are really rich. Yes, let's go do it. Yes.
No, stop right here. Huh? Do you know that shark's fin soup is poisonous because of the toxic mercury?
Really? Are you sure?
I really like eating shark's fin during Chinese New Year though.
So we realize that as consumers, we have demands for shark fin soup. And this results in overfishing because we have an increased demand and therefore the supply needs to meet the demand and fishermen begin to fish more.
Overfishing means we eat and catch more of these sharks every day.
And the prey are what we eat. Our salmon, our trout, everything. We will one day end up having no more fish. Imagine if one day you walk into your favorite seafood restaurant and the boss tells you,
sorry, there's just no more fish left.
How would you feel?
I've also heard on the radio that no intergovernmental organizations and government and fisheries are not cooperating to count the exact amount of sharks that are being fished, and that means that our ecosystem could be collapsing around us right now and none of us know it.
And we have to stop these actions now before it takes its toll on humans itself.
The cook came out with a very innovative way of presenting that scientific data to a lay person, and that was really impressive. More importantly, because of the short amount of time that they had to do that. I mean, not even myself, that I'm a scientist, can read 5 papers in 1.5 hours. This was very, very impressive. I'm once again impressed by Dunham School. Those kids were fantastic. They did it very well in the auditions, and I think I had the honor today to judge them again, and they were very, 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 very good. I really like them.
The presentations were all well done, but I'm very impressed with some who bothered to mention what they read. Others gave very broad presentations, but overall, I'm very impressed with the standard.
It seems like teams in Group 2 have impressed the judges with their presentations. But before we get to their results, let's head over to the Superstar Gemini to find out how teams in Group 3 are raring to go in the third challenge of this quarterfinals. The Superstar Gemini is about 230 meters in length and weighs approximately 50,000 tons. It has a maximum speed of 20 knots and a cruising speed of 18 knots. But for the 4 teams from Group 3, they are more concerned with questions like how big a part does the engineering, design, and type of materials chosen to build the ship play in ensuring its structural malleability and safety. Cruise ships today are very safe, but in the last century, this often wasn't the case. Take the famous case of the Titanic, which sank on its maiden voyage, and the lesser-known example of Liberty ships. During the Japanese occupation of Singapore, America was mass-producing these cargo ships. But when they sailed into the North Atlantic, they suffered catastrophic cracks in their steel hulls and rivets. Quarterfinalist teams on the cruise ship today must communicate to the judges why the Titanic and Liberty ships failed in terms of material science, and also explain why modern cruise ships no longer have these fatal flaws.
Welcome to Star Cruises Superstar Gemini, and congratulations on making it to the quarterfinals. So I'm Mark John from the Institute of High Performance Computing A-Star.
I'm Tian Chen from the Institute of Molecular and Cell Biology.
So today I would like to ask you the following question. In World War II, America was making a lot of ships called the Liberty ships. They mass-produced these things on an enormous scale. But these ships had a particular reputation for breaking in a very spectacular way. And people could hear the sound of it breaking from over a mile away. So there's one curious thing, that only ships that were in the North Atlantic failed this way. The ones in the South Pacific functioned okay. So I'd like you guys to explain to me what was the reason for the difference of the behavior of these two. I'd also like to ask you guys, so you might have heard about the Titanic. It also failed on its maiden voyage while sailing in the North Atlantic. I'd also like you to tell us why modern ships are safe and do not fail in this kind of way.
So the goal of your challenge today is to address Mark's question. You'll be scored based on your clarity, the organization, and creativity of your presentation. In addition, you have to take note of scientific accuracy and the engagement of your audience. And since we are on board this super luxurious cruise ship, you also have the rare opportunity to interact with the chief engineer himself. So that's all you have. Carry on.
First, the teams get to visit the bridge and grill the chief engineer for information they need for their presentations.
My name is Magnus, I'm chief engineer on board here. You had some questions, I believe?
How has the composition of the steel used to build a hull changed from in the past and modern?
Before they make riveted hulls, and today we make welded hulls. The first ship they welded, they used the same steel as they did in the riveted ship because they didn't know that, and then they crack. And after examine and see why they crack, they find out that they become too stiff and the material was too brittle, so they have to go for a little bit more softer steel.
If like riveting allows for more flexibility in the ship, then why do modern ships use welding instead of riveting?
Yeah, cheaper, much faster.
How does this ship prevent the hull from experiencing brittle failure when it crashes with any object?
The ship is not built to crash at all. It should not crash. But of course you can take small impacts and you cannot make the ship too stiff and it cannot be too soft. If it gets too stiff, it will be brittle, and if it gets too soft, it will be bent.
How does the steel used in ships now differ from the ships of the past?
Before you were building ships by rivets, when you join the plates together, you know, rivets. And that means that you can have a little bit movements in the ship. But when they start to do the full welded hulls like we have today, then you have to have a little bit flexibility in the steel.
In order to do well in their presentations, teams must include the scientific concept of the ductile to brittle temperature transition, or DBTT. This describes how flexible materials become brittle when they get cold. This can cause catastrophic cracks in metal structures, such as the hull of a steel ship. The DBTT can help describe what exactly went so tragically wrong with the Titanic. While Group 3 take in what they learned from the ship's engineer, we head back to the Lee Kong Chian Museum of Natural History, where Group 2's results of their presentations on shark biology are out. Our first team to advance is Raffles Girls' School.
I think it's an engaging plot. Then we have a very interesting storyline.
And we act really well and explain the concept really easier and clearly.
The second team to make the semi-finals is Temasek Junior College IP.
I would think that the reason why we got through is because of our grasp of the definition of biomagnification. So we were able to firmly understand and explain the whole concept about it.
One of the things we also had to do was make it as simple as possible so that in layman terms, so that normal people could also understand it and increase awareness.
The final team going through from Group 2 is Dunman High School.
I personally think we got in because we managed to package a very complicated science concept into a very simple analogy of a hamburger.
I think we got in because we delivered really digestible bites of information.
So far, 8 teams have completed their presentation. We've seen how some of them engaged the judges with their lively and interesting presentation, while others struggled to make sense of what they were trying to communicate. Now, when we come back, we'll have a look at the last 4 teams in the final round of presentation. Coming up, the teams get to the bottom of why the Titanic and Liberty ships sank and find out which teams go through to the semi-finals.
Hey, it's Kim! Now, the adult human skeleton has 206 bones, the smallest of which are 3 bones in our middle ear, and the longest and strongest is the femur, or also the thigh bone. But anyways, did you know that babies are actually born with a different amount of bones? What do you think? Do babies have more or less bones than an adult human? Find out after the break. Welcome back! So do you think babies have more or less bones than an adult? The answer is more. Babies are actually born with 300 bones at birth, many of which have cartilage between them. This extra flexibility helps them to pass through the birth canal and also allows for rapid growth. With age, many of these bones fuse to form the 206 bones that make up an average human skeleton.
Welcome back to the National Science Challenge 2017. Now, before the break, we left some teams in Group 3 floating in the high seas, waiting to make their presentation to the judges. Now it's time to see if they sink or swim. To score maximum points, the teams need to communicate that one of the factors of the sinking of the Titanic was likely the very low-quality iron and steel rivets that became brittle in the icy waters of the North Atlantic. When the hull collided with the iceberg, the steel plate in the hull didn't break, but the brittle iron rivets popped off, letting water flow into 6 of her watertight compartments, eventually sinking the ship. Let's find out which teams got this right.
On this episode of Mysteries of the Universe, let us investigate why does a ship break? So in the case of the Titanic, the ship has sank because it crashed into an iceberg.
Imagine a dark and stormy night. Well, actually, it wasn't stormy, but this was the particular night in 1912 during which the Titanic famously sunk.
Well, you don't know me. I died during the Titanic crash. Well, you must be wondering, why is she back? Because I need to avenge my death.
All the teams successfully used dry ice to illustrate the ductile to brittle temperature transition.
So this represents a new material that is used, like the new steel that is being used today, and this represents what has been used on the Titanic. You see, if you apply a little bit of pressure, like example the crash of the ice from the iceberg, you actually will receive this. You actually, instead of like being this, it actually will bend instead of breaking. However, when you apply pressure to the old type of steel that was used in the Titanic, it will actually crack, like this.
For the Titanic that sank, it's actually a combination of reasons, but one of the main material errors that they have identified is that the rivets themselves undergo ductile to brittle transition.
This is a candy. It is normally very flexible. When it is cold, it breaks into 2 pieces without much flexibility. This is because of brittle fracture.
This happens because metals are typically hard and stiff. So, for example, styrofoam is hard and stiff, and it will easily break when a large force is exerted.
Hwa Chong Institution gets the detailed science spot on, but science communication is about igniting the passion of the public for science. And the judges look a little bit bored.
The way to describe these things are malleable and ductile. Ductile means it can be stretched without breaking. Malleable means it can be bent easily without breaking.
So I felt like Hwa Chong actually stood out quite a bit in terms of trying to deliver more of the scientific content. Unfortunately, they also stood out in having some of the weakest engagement with the audience too.
NUS High School of Math and Science and River Valley High asked the chief engineer a lot of questions, and it's paid off with an accurate description of how modern cruise ships are constructed for maximum safety.
Now, I have done some research and I'm going to tell you exactly why. So basically, what are the features in modern ships? Firstly, there are better quality materials used. So for example, in the hull, which is the underside of the ship, there is ship-grade steel being used. What this means is that it's not too stiff or it's not too soft. The reason why it's not too stiff is to prevent breaking, as shown earlier. And the reason why it cannot be too soft is to prevent the ship from bending under the pressure of weight.
Lastly, the Titanic only had airtight chambers that were horizontally airtight. But now, instead of being horizontally airtight, it's also vertically airtight, so it's completely airtight. In case the ship crashes onto something, it is lightweight enough for the ship to remain buoyant.
The double hull will allow the ship to sustain minor damage without sinking, as water will only fill up the space between the inner hull and the outer hull, without going into the watertight compartments. The hull is also in a U shape, and the ship is designed to be able to float even with 2 of the watertight compartments filled. So without the sharp edges, the ship is more flexible and will not sustain so much impact on one surface. So this will ensure the ship's hull does not crack as easily as it does in the Titanic.
Although we are focused on one topic, we have to be open-minded to other areas as well. That's what science communication is about.
All aboard!
Aye, aye, Captain.
Most of them had quite creative use of what we've given them. And they also explain the concepts rather well without being too technical. Though I feel like sometimes maybe you don't have to go into details with the numbers. Maybe simple graphic demonstrations would be better.
And now let's see which teams from Group 3 made it to the semi-finals. The first team to make it through is NUS High School of Math and Science.
Yes!
So we believe that our group demonstrated the demonstration quite well, and our presentation was enough to support our demonstration.
Of course, I feel the most important factor is the teamwork and working together.
The next team advancing is River Valley High School.
We managed to express our ideas through very creative forms, such as we broke the candy and we ripped the paper and we did all sorts of skits and drama.
I think we passed because we are just too cool to fail.
And our final team to make it to the semi-finals is Hwa Chong Institution.
I think our use of practical demonstrations throughout the presentation actually helped us to connect with the judges better.
We did well in the interactive aspect of the presentation, but at the same time we were able to cover the scientific concepts adequately.
After all the challenges had been done, we are so sorry to see Victoria School, ACS Independent and Raffles Institution leave us. They've worked so hard and been such great contenders, but with their elimination, the 9 teams still in the running for the ultimate championship title are NUS High School of Math and Science, Hwa Chong Institution, River Valley High School, School of Science and Technology, St. Joseph's Institution, Catholic High, Temasek Junior College, Raffles Girls School, and Dunman High School.
Trust me, the challenges are only going to get tougher as we advance further into the competition. Next week, our semi-finalists will be on this brand new stage at our campus at One Stars Avenue as they battle it out for the coveted title of National Science Challenge Champions. Watch out for your favorite TV and radio personalities who will give the teams fascinating science riddles to solve. Teams visit DSO National Laboratories to analyze malware, the Center for Remote Imaging Sensing and Processing to analyze particles in the atmosphere. And they will head to the Bioinformatics Institute at Biopolis to take on a degree-level biology challenge. Also, look out for our inaugural Imagineering Challenge, where students test out their original contraptions. Who will rise above the rest to be crowned National Science Challenge Champions 2017? Well, you're just gonna have to tune in next week for more science drama. We'll see you then.